Why bet the company on travel so much?
The number of personal loans which are taken for travel is almost 40%.
40% of all the loans.
All personal loans.
Has India converted from a savings country to a splurging country?
For the young generation, for sure. You get into a job and after first year you're planning Norway. Almost everybody is either doing a postgrad or a undergrad there. Now for most countries, the country's travel strategy depends on Indians reaching there. That's a dramatic change. You look at a country like Malaysia, a developed country, which would ask you 5,000 questions 10, 20 years ago, is saying, must come, you're most welcome.
How far are we from Indian passport being equally powerful to a US, Singapore or Australian passport?
It is not going to be easy. The number of foreigners arriving in India, I don't think it has gone up to the extent it should have.
And why do you think is the reason for that? Because GDP is rising, the India story.
Is that marketing about tourism? That's the question.
Hi, this is Siddhartha Welcome to the Neon Show. Today, I have a guest who I have known for 6 years. He's one of the legends in Indian banking and has worked in the banking sector for more than 15 years. Today, your host Siddhartha is going to talk about a lot on Indian banking sector, the evolution of neobanks, the travel tech sector, and as you know, right, I'm also the founder of Neon Fund, a B2B enterprise SaaS focused fund that invests in the most upcoming enterprising SaaS companies started out of India, building for the globe. Vinay, welcome to the Neon Show. So excited to have you here. You have been the founder of Niyo Bank, and you're also like Neo and Neo both run together, right? NIYO, NEO. So you have been the pioneers of Neo banking or new age banking, as we see. And Neo today leads all the sectors, everything which is travel tech married with finance, be it providing credit card, debit card, FX, for the customers. And India has seen huge number of people travel abroad. I think every year we do a new landmark in the number of people who travel abroad.
Absolutely.
Right. And you have been in banking sector for how long, Vinay?
I think 2003 was the first
21
time,
years
almost
now.
21 years now. And Siddhartha, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me here. It's always fun interacting with you. So yes, it's been a long time in banking, almost 21 years.
And how, first I want to, before we dive into Neo, travel, tech, finance, I want to dive into, your experience, right? Can you share it was 2003 the first job that you took after college?
No, I was in FMCG. So the first job actually after college was Parle, where we used to sell mineral water. Not the normal Parle, with the biscuit. Is the other Parle, which was selling Bisleri mineral water. So they owned Bisleri, which was a household name in the mineral water category. And my first posting was in Rajasthan. So 1998, when people used to jump off the train to fill their bottles of water and get back on the train. So that was the time when we actually wanted to make mineral water like a common ubiquitous available product for the consumers. So it was I think among all the jobs I've done, including what I'm doing today, probably the most exciting time for me, because it was almost like a category setting. People didn't know mineral water, and at least for commoners it was only typically sold in hotels. So and especially in Rajasthan. So we used to be on the trucks, be on the autos, doing the highways, putting up the product for display in the highways for people who are traveling from Delhi to Jaipur, let's say, or Jaipur to Bikaner to pick it up.
And which college you were from?
I passed out from a college called IIRM in Jaipur, and from there, Parle was the.
And it was an MBA?
It was an MBA.
Okay. So first job people imagine like consulting jobs after MBA, right? High posh offices, traveling abroad. And here you were in the midst of the hardest conditions.
No, so for in our that time, at least 1998 types, one of the most sought after jobs were FMCG.
Okay.
That if you
Hindustan Unilever and
if you get Unilever, you get HUL, you get Parle. Those are the best of the jobs you could aim for. And the when you started the job as an MT, they would put you through fire. So you would start. There was nobody who would get a management job unless you've done sales.
Okay.
So you start off on the ground, you start off on autos, selling in cities, on trucks, selling on highways. And that's where you learn the tricks of the trade. And from there you go forward. So I was there for 4 years with Parle. Like I said, very, very memorable years. Started off on the trucks, of course, learning my trade, then on the factory production floor, learning about production. And then finally I was heading the Rajasthan unit before I decided to move into banking.
Okay. And why the switch into banking?
So banking was like a sunrise sector at that point in time, because earlier banking was very limited to people walking into the branch. But this whole concept of bank walking up to you was very new back in 2001, 2002. And they needed people who understood distribution.
Okay.
And who can set this whole distribution. So banks were actively chasing FMCG talent.
Okay.
And that's where it came in, and we thought maybe it will be an exciting thing to do. You always hear about banking, and it's definitely looks exotic, and so we thought, that's practically the reason why we thought, okay, we've done FMCG for 5 years, let's try something new. So shifted to banking.
Tell us about how you have seen the banking sector evolve since 2003, 2004, till you jumped and became a founder in Niyo in 2016.
So banking, as I told you, till 2001, at least as we remember, was a very elite kind of a thing where people had bank accounts, but typically if you want everything, you have to go to bank, and you're always kind of thinking how I'll get the service, and you'd be very obliged. If the bank would give you loan, you will be ever thankful to the bank. If you get a credit card, my God, you've cracked it in life types. So it used to be a very kind of almost like an elite product, and very much product where all the power was on the side of the bank, and a consumer would go there, not expecting much. And if
even the bank cashier used to be an elite job.
Yeah, bank cashier was, he had his own. It's supposed to be very good job. Where my classmates became the bank cashier, and we were like, wow, he's cracked it. Yeah. It's good. So, and branch manager used to be like a really powerful guy in the city itself. You got a branch manager means
branch manager used to be a mini CEO.
Absolutely. So and even more nakras, I think.
Yeah.
So that was the bank which we kind of started off in 2002, and from there the way it has evolved is it has become a more like a consumer business where consumer is the king, and everybody is trying to solve for you. And if you come in, depending on if you're a priority customer, there's a different launch for you, priority sector, and different launch for you. So whole differentiation between the customers, then how fast we can make the turnaround so that you don't have to wait. So everything is around the customer. And then this reach out, which is where you don't have to even leave your home if you're an RM. If you are a good enough customer, we attach an RM to you and he will come and do everything for you. So life has really, really changed. Processes have changed. So when we were back there in 2014, 2013 even, account opening used to be such a big pain. We have a stack of documents to open a basic bank account, to Aadhaar coming in. And now, I think majority of the accounts in India are opened just on the mobile app. So dramatic evolution in terms of comfort for the customer to open the account. In terms of how much the power is kind of shifted towards the consumer, how much better the services have become. And now if you compare to global standards, and we will touch upon as we go on neo-banking, Indian banks are among the best in the world in terms of technology. So your experience you give to the customer and what regulator kind of forces you to do to improve. So for example, your lock unlock of a card.
Yeah,
this was a big feature in other parts of the world where a neobank will come and say that we've given lock unlock. Big shit. RBI has made it mandatory for all banks to make it available. So in India, it's hygiene that you need to have a lock unlock. You need to get a message whenever a transaction happens. You need to have a second factor authentication on security. So what a lot of what is hygiene in India today, I think it's probably the most advanced in the world.
You really think that? Like you can compare India's HDFC with Wells Fargo and JP Morgan in the US?
So in terms of app, like HDFC is one, but if we go to, let's say, ICICI's app, if we go to IDFC's app or Axis app, they're not too far behind from Wells Fargo. They'll be better maybe.
And what was your first job in banking? Was it Kotak?
No, the first, I spent 10 years in Stanchart. The first job was probably the longest. So 10 years in Standard Chartered Bank, amazing place to work. And I started off on the lending side, doing personal loans and later on business loans. And then I did various roles there. So yeah, on both sides of the balance sheet. So lending, and then I also did the other part of the job where you would collect money. So salary accounts, savings account, current accounts.
And after Standard Chartered?
After Stanchart, I joined ING, which got taken over by Kotak.
Okay.
So there I spent another 2-3 years, I think, 2013.
I remember before you started Niyo, you were a VP at Kotak.
Yeah, I was working with ING. We got taken over by Kotak. So 3 years I was there. So total 10 years in Stanchart, 3 years in... And 1 year, I started off in ICICI, sorry. But that was a very small stint, like 9 months hardly.
So what was the pivotal moment when Indian banking decided to shift to digital? Which year was that?
I would say it was around 2010, 2011 is when it started with a lot of digital kind of trend happening and channels getting more digital. But the big shift happened with Aadhaar.
2014-15 is the time frame.
With Aadhaar coming in, I think that really changed the game.
Because today I don't remember when the last I visited a bank branch.
Yeah, you don't need to. You don't need to anymore. So yeah, I think the change started in 2008, 2010. And by 2020, that decade, it is complete. Now whatever is happening is incremental in nature. But the big leap from branches being the one and all, number of branches being the most important factor to number of customers being important, branches really don't matter today.
And I think my complaint with the banking sector of what it has become in India is become very sales and push heavy. So I avoid even going to the bank branch because they'll try to sell me 10 products. When does this transition happen? Because you remember, right? Because earlier it was like...
It was all inbound, yes.
Inbound.
So again, it is maybe a little legacy of FMCG guys like us. Yeah, but what happened is that FMCG is all driven by very objective measures, very clear targets and it's a daily target game that you have to sell every day.
Yeah.
And branches earlier was largely the source of revenue used to be CASA, which is current account, savings account. And in current account, savings account, you really can't push somebody. If you got money, you got money. If you don't have money, you don't have money. It's as simple as that. Similarly, in loans, you can't push anybody too much. If I need a loan, I will take it. If I don't need it, why will I take the loan? So these two were the core banking products. In these products, there was never a push. So for 100 years, it is very simple. You want to deposit, you deposit. If you have extra money, you will deposit. If you need money, you will take loans. That has been banking all along. And then comes insurance. And then comes mutual fund, and then comes all these structured products where margins are crazy for the banks. So insurance distributor margins are anywhere 30-40%. In earlier days when ULIP used to be there, it used to be like 80% margins. And all banks run on ROI. So when you're running on ROI, what are the choices available to the branch manager to make money? Deposits, you can control only so much. You can get new customers, you'll get deposits fine. Lending, very much driven on whether the customer needs it or not. Big one point, if you push lending, the money will never come back.
Yeah.
So these are the traditional things they were doing. Now, beyond that, the revenue you have to make, you have to push insurance. And insurance is a very hard sell product. Nobody gets up in the morning thinking about buying insurance.
Yeah.
So you have to really push it down the throat of people practically. So and hence the RM looks very pushy because he'll come and sell you insurance. He'll come and sell you mutual funds. It will come and sell you structured products. The locker, you have only so many. So now locker becomes an instrument to sell the other products. So if you want to buy a locker, typically you'll say, okay, first you do an insurance of 1 lakh and then I will give you a locker. So that's how typically it is. Yeah, that's why it feels very pushy. That you really want to avoid the bank RM these days.
Yeah, that's the truth, right?
Yes, that's true. And then, which is why, people are comfortable with digital banking. They can do whatever they want. They can create FDs, break FDs, order a checkbook, whatever feature you wanted when you wanted to walk into a branch, you're getting all that. And you don't have to handle. Everybody likes to be nice in the world in general, India in particular. So you don't like to say no again and again.
When you started Niyo in 2016, I believe you could have your job in 2015.
Yeah, I put down my papers in 2015, and there was like a transition period of around 6 months before I could be released. Yeah. So I joined in April 16.
And it was an unusual age because you started when you were in your early 40s, right?
Yeah, you can say that.
Yeah. So it was very interesting, right? You started with a thesis of like most of the folks that had kind of experience that you had would have started in NBFC, and NBFC was a default yes, because you can easily scale an NBFC, let's say, to $100 million or 800 crores of AUM easily, and you can keep on rotating that money and keep on organically growing bigger and bigger. And NBFC is a very easy way to list in an Indian market. Why did you choose the different path?
Maybe it is also a little bit to do with my history in terms of the experience. So as I mentioned, my first job was lending when all first roles were lending till 2008. And 2008, during that crash, lending was the worst impacted. So that kind of left a impression on me that this is really dangerous. Whatever money you make can evaporate overnight.
Did Indian banks also suffer in 2008?
Massive. 2007, 2008 was a complete washout for anybody who was doing unsecured. So, and I was always in unsecured lending. So hence I had a little bit of a
bias
towards lending, and I thought liabilities was a much better business. And I mean, that was, I think, the main reason.
Yeah. And what was your thesis on, like, neobank was not a word even then, NEO, when you started. So what was your thesis when you started? How did you want to change the banking sector?
So I could see that branches were not really a place where customers enjoyed coming.
Yeah.
And
it has also happened back then, like 2015 time frame. The customer started hating branches.
Yes, it happened since ULIPs. So ULIPs were there in 2000. I think ULIP whole trend started in 2005, I think. So the number of customers who've got scammed, I would say, definitely by ULIP and by the branches selling ULIPs, I think everybody will have a story.
What were the other theses when you started Niyo?
So the other thesis was that if you don't want to go to a branch, then you would want a digital experience which is cutting edge. You don't want an app to have glitches. You really want an experience which is seamless, just like you would have the best of the other apps which were available back then. So that was the idea, that you kind of make it everything digital, and you kind of provide a service to an average customer, which a typical high value customer would get with an RM. So with the RM, you will have the ability to, RM will come and guide you, right or wrong, whatever it is, but at least the RM is there at your beck and call. You don't have to go to the branch, etc. So with digital, it is like a digital RM available to you to do anything. You want to order a checkbook, you want to, you want some kind of a leave delivered to you, you want a check to be deposited, a lot of this stuff could be money to be transferred, all of this you could do it through the app. That was the whole concept.
Got it. And what are the first area that you picked up when you started?
So we wanted to kind of change the salary landscape. So in US, salary was paid every 15 days. In India, it was paid every 30 days. So we thought, why don't we bring that in? So that was the original idea with which we started. And salary account is a very stable business.
Banks love it.
Banks love it because the CASA keeps growing, very good for cross-sell. So I also came with the idea that let's create a different salary account, and with their full digital flow. So no branches and a salary account will be the kind of best combination. So that's what at that point in time we came in with. And then when we started, we realized, boss, it's really, really complicated because you cannot do that business unless you are a bank. And as an outsider, to start a business where you are integrating with the bank into their core banking system in 2016 was practically impossible. So it took us almost 4 years before we could roll out a first co-branded savings account.
Okay.
So that's how, because it was a full thing was a concept. Nobody kind of was willing to understand what it was.
And when did the current pivot towards the travel tech happen?
That was 2018. 2018 is we rolled out our first Niyo Global card. We tested it in IIMs and to exchange students, and we realized that this is a really good value add to the customer, because till then getting forex itself was very painful. Then you load it, you pay some money, you use it, you pay some money, unload it, you pay some money. So we came up with this whole revolutionary concept in 2018 that was, we'll convert your debit card into a credit card into a forex card. You use it like a normal debit card when you're in India. When you travel abroad, that's your forex card. You don't need to do anything. So absolutely revolutionary. I think probably the best product even today in cross border. That was the idea. So we started in 2018. We did in 2019, and as we were scaling, came. So naturally, for 2 years, nobody was traveling, so the card was not needed. So we had to do the pivot into traditional neobanking and trying to do all that. And once the kind of settled down in 22, we again came back to what we like doing. So we loved the product because it was a category creator, really good value add to the customer, and and generally gets you the kind of customer where you can cross sell some stuff and be profitable in long run.
So what is the current avatar and what are the current features or the products that you offer to customers?
So from 2018 to now, I would say the original product remains the same. So debit card, which hardly charges you any forex, fill it, shut it, use it, forget it. So that continues to be the core. We've added credit card also with partner banks, a secured credit card with a similar feature. Unsecured credit card also, it's around the corner. So those were the core remains the same. So our acquisition for a user coming to Niyo doesn't change. The user will come to Niyo if you want to really solve for your cross-border payment through cards. That concept has remained same for many, many years now. On top of it, we have added a lot of features which a typical traveler, because now people associate us with travel. So then we've added a lot of features where we try and make the travel experience really good. So from earlier to banking made safer, simpler used to be our core line, to now we're saying the new way to travel. That if you want to travel the way a new way to travel is a new way to travel in life. Debit card, credit cards are what they are. You can now take currency through us. So your forex cash taking experience is significantly better.
I can order currency at my home?
Yeah, you can order currency at your home. Remittance experience is significantly better. So these are all cross-border payment instruments, everything available at a single point in Niyo. And then beyond that, we are also now trying to give an elevated experience on other travel items. So for example, Visa is one challenge. So we have probably the most transparent Visa app in the country.
Okay.
They may be players who are digitally selling more than us, but I can say 100% sure, similar to our debit card, we have the most transparent visa process in the country. And probably the lowest cost, I think, for sure. Similarly, flights. So we recently launched flights. Again, extremely transparent flight process, beautiful UI, UX. We have some reward program you can use on flights, burn it. So experiences, we are still working to make it really the best. So our cross-border products, visa and flight. I think all these products, we are fairly confident that they are best in the category where we are. Experiences, which is when you travel abroad and then you want to buy a ticket for Eiffel Tower, ticket for Louvre Museum. Those are the partnerships we are still working on. But the objective is that anything to do with travel, you would maybe we will not do 1,000 of those services. We will do 10, but those 10 will be the best the user can get in terms of value for money.
And why bet the company on travel so much? What's the numbers in terms of the overall India travel spends, category spends, or overall market size?
So when we started, it was we didn't look at the market, honestly. We just look at the value, what we can create, and are we doing something different? And that point in time, we were probably the only company in the world doing it. Now in India itself, we got 30 people doing a zero forex. So yeah. So it was just the excitement of building a new product. And then we realized that, with this excitement, as it always happens, that if you build a beautiful product, the market will find itself. And we had some setbacks in terms of regulator challenges with our partner banks and all those things. But irrespective, we have kind of managed to navigate through all that. And the market is grown much more rapidly than what we would have thought. The Indian students going abroad to study used to be 500,000 5 years ago, is 1.5 million now. And almost everybody is either doing a postgrad or a undergrad there. So unexpected growth and continuing. Similarly, the number of Indians traveling abroad now, for most countries, the country's travel strategy depends on Indians reaching there. That's a dramatic change.
Like even for developed countries like Australia, US and UK?
Of course. So for a lot of countries, especially with then Chinese travelers taking a backseat because of whatever internal was going on in China, India became really important. And hence you look at a country like Malaysia, a developed country, which would ask you 5,000 questions, just 10, 20 years ago, for you to allow you to enter Malaysia, is saying, "Must come, will most welcome." it's a visa on arrival, or free visa for India. So you take Malaysia, you take Indonesia, of course South Asian countries, Sri Lanka, Maldives, like we used it as a diplomatic instrument. So Indian travel is, especially in these geographies, is very important. Europe, it is super important, but Europe, there is a different challenge, that as it is, there are too many tourists in Europe. So you would have seen what's happening in Spain, where they are throwing water guns at tourists and saying, "Please go back." So it remains important for these countries. But in some of the other countries, you take Georgia and Turkey. So these countries, Indian tourists are really, really a very important part of those strategy.
So do you think in these countries that you mentioned, let's say especially South Asian countries like Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia, Middle East like Dubai, would, let's say if they earn $100 through tourism, would Indian traveler make 5 to 10% of that?
Easily. Like it will be for countries like Vietnam, and it will be more than that.
Okay, like 20-30%.
Yeah, it will be around that zone, surely.
But are Indians traveling to these countries because they are relatively cheaper? Let's say traveling to Europe or Australia would be a bit expensive.
So typically what happens is, when you start your life journey, so another big change not in banking but in human behavior, is that in 2000s, your first loan would be your two-wheeler loan, would be your car loan, then you will take a home loan, and then you will think of anything else. Cut to today, in an Instagram world, first loan is a travel loan.
Okay.
So the number of personal loans which are taken for travel is almost 40%, if I'm not wrong.
40% of all the loans?
All personal loans. The personal unsecured.
Has India converted from a savings country to a splurging country?
I would say for the young generation, for sure. So you would, like, the number of people who would take personal loans for travel is, I would not have imagined as a banker 20 years ago.
What is the age of these people who are taking these personal loans for travel?
It starts as early as 23. You get into a job, and after first year, you're planning Norway. So that is one big change. And what happens is, because you're traveling early, first thing you want to travel close by. So where you kind of understand what is international travel. So Thailand is typically the first place you want to go, because the budget is
because of the country, the welcoming nature of the country, or
many things. One is the budget.
Yeah.
When you do the research, as an individual, you can go and do a nice 2 weeks vacation in a lakh if you are a single person. Europe, you can't even imagine that. So that's one. The second is that that you can plan today and leave tomorrow and still be able to make it, because visas are arrival. So these are some of the reasons which added to Thailand being a very, very popular destination. Now Vietnam has become similar. Direct flight. You don't have a hopping flight, etc. It's like a 2 hours, 2.5 hours you're reaching Thailand. So Vietnam also took off after the direct flight, and now it's turn of Bali. So they are definitely way more value for money. If you first time want to experience international thing, then Dubai is again very close by. Great value for money. Again, your return ticket is same as Bangalore, Delhi, Bangalore, Dubai is almost same, and be beautiful place to be there. So this circuit between not other Middle East country, Dubai for sure. So Dubai and Sri Lanka and the South Asian countries tend to be the first sphere of travel, and from then you kind of expand to a few people go to Japan, and then on this side you go to Europe. And once you go to Europe, then of course you have to go every few years.
I think this summer was the highest number of Indian visiting Europe ever.
Yeah, I think it is going to be there every summer now because Indians are getting richer. You see where we were 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
1992 to 2022 is a dramatic change. So there is a lot of disposable income and your willingness to take loans. Because you are feeling good about economy, which means you're feeling good about jobs, which you mean that you're not worried that I'll lose my job and I have to save for a rainy day. You can be aggressive with your lending and travel and things like that. And another dramatic shift is the double income. That back 30 years ago, typical families were a single income family.
Yeah.
Now it's a double income family. So even if one person loses a job, fine. The other will be there. So I think spending capacity is increased.
And does India GDP and the GDP growth have a direct role to play here in the number of people traveling abroad?
Absolutely. The more richer you get, the more comfortable the other countries are in receiving you.
Okay.
And more comfortable you are in traveling. Travel is very much related to your disposable income, one, and your sense of security. That you know that even in a rainy day, I will have enough jobs around me to make this EMI work.
And the other country knows that this person is not coming here to settle, right?
The other person, the Malaysia, and the reason I gave the example of Malaysia and not the other countries, because others are still developing. Even maybe Thailand or Indonesia are not too far away from India in per capita income. But Malaysia is a developed country. It's a very, very good country. So for them to have a confidence that Indians will not come and settle down here, and they find enough jobs and opportunities and reasons to be in India is very, very good sign for us.
I think
in fact, the Schengen visa also. Like my first visa when I took in 2005, I was traveling for 17 days. I got the visa for exact 17 days.
Okay.
If I had missed my flight, I would have I would have been an illegal person there. To today, where they're saying, okay, we made a policy that if they've been there last year, I'll give you 2 years now or 3 years now. If you come again after 2 years, I'll give you 5 years. So it's a dramatic shift from what people thought of Indians back then and now. So I think it is really very, very proud.
How far are we from Indian passport being equally powerful to a US, Singapore or Australian passport?
Like 2047, I think. When we are a developed country, that will take time. Because see, the reason is that Singapore total number of people itself is a few million.
Yes.
We are like 1.4 billion people.
Yeah.
And we will want to, some of us will want to emigrate out, etc. And so it is not going to be easy for the passport to be as powerful, because even if the country becomes very rich, it is never equally distributed. So you will still have a lot of people who would want to go and settle somewhere. So that risk will be there with the other country. So they would want to kind of, if somebody wants to settle there, it's good, but then you have to come to the right channels. Yeah. So hence the like unlimited passport, I don't see changing to the US level, at least for next 10, 15, 20 years.
But over a period of time, do you have data points of how has India passport become more powerful?
Yeah, of course. There is a passport index. No? So the passport index ranks you among 180 countries, where do you lie? So Indian passport is moving up.
Like, let's say, for example, when you mentioned your first Shenzhen visa, right? 2005, you got it only for 17 days.
Yes.
And back then, I assume Thailand and nobody would have visa on arrival for Indians.
No. You would have, of course, Nepal was there. But yeah, no meaningful country.
But these countries haven't still become visa free for Indians, right? That you don't require a visa to travel.
I think some of them have. Okay. I think in Thailand it's visa free.
Okay.
I think so.
I think till last year it was visa on arrival, but I don't know.
Visa on arrival with no visa fee. But I think, I'm mostly sure that in Thailand you can walk in and you don't have to pay for the visa for sure, but you don't have to, like, they will just stamp as an entry as if you're coming to India.
Okay. Got it. But still, like for I think US and other countries.
No, US is it's a painful process. US is not an easy process. But the good thing about US is once you go through that pain, it's a decade.
Yeah.
With Canada, it's a decade. So yeah, but it's worth it.
But you would be keeping track of all these things very minutely because it directly impacts your business.
Yeah. We keep track of which country has made your entry easy.
Yeah.
And which country has introduced a direct flight. So these two things dramatically change the tourism for that country. Then you can tailor make some programs for that country. You can change your advertisements. You can create blogs. You can do because almost 50% of our business is all organic in nature. So we have to create blogs and we have to create that. Okay, this country also Niyo works to give you the comfort.
So can you tell us like recent 5-6 countries that made life for Indians more comfortable to travel there? Let's say.
I think the biggest example is Vietnam.
Yeah.
Did both. Made the visa process very simple and introduced a direct flight.
Okay.
So Indonesia is another example. Malaysia, flights were always there, direct. Visa is another example. Georgia is another example. Your Kazakhstan is another example. Turkey is a great example. That whatever might be our problems, otherwise with Turkey.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can just walk in. It's visa on arrival.
But I think because they directly impact your business, these are all the states, most of them, which are southern of India. Any states which are like north of India?
For example, Dubai, the visa process become really, really fast. Typically 2 days you get a visa. The thing is they make a lot of money on visa. The visa is from $5,000-6,000. That's a separate issue. But the process is quick. So hence everybody wants to go to Dubai. Because it's great for kids.
Yeah.
So the moment you have a couple of kids, you got only 2 places to go. Dubai, Singapore, there's no third place. Actually, Europe, there's nothing for kids practically. You have to go to maybe Disneyland, France. So till your kids hit maybe the age of 15, the best place to visit remains Dubai and Singapore.
And what about South America? Right? North America, we know is pretty tough still.
South America, so far, only the most avid travelers who would want to go to Machu Picchu and do some exotic stuff there. South America is not on the radar for various reasons. One is travel is painful. It takes almost 30 hours to reach there. Second, there is, like, you've got Machu Picchu and some of these things, but it is not like Europe where you enter once and you can do 20 countries. Like Indians like to do a tick mark, cut, many countries. So you don't have that there. Or it is not like Australia or UK or Canada or US where it is English speaking. Everybody would have some relative, some friend there. So, all of this adds up. Some kid will be studying there. So all that is not there. These countries, the English speaking countries, you go to drop your kids, go to pick up your kids. So many graduation ceremonies become a big shit now. So you go for that also.
Yeah.
So that is not there in South America. That is one. And then there is this, Indians typically want to really assess risk. For example, Afghanistan is a good place to travel, but would you or I travel?
No.
Definitely no. Because we optimize for risk somehow, and which is absolutely fair. So when you look at risk going to South America, you would worry about going to Colombia. You would look at Mexico and think twice as an Indian because of perception.
Yeah.
What is on the ground, I don't know.
Yeah.
I've not been there. I don't intend to.
Yeah.
So similarly, Brazil, like there's some crime in Sao Paulo, so Rio de Janeiro. So it is not really as I don't know many people who got their bucket list except for Machu Picchu. Machu Picchu is on bucket list for a lot of people. But other than that, I don't know.
But because you being in the travel industry, are you seeing more and more foreigners also travel to India now? Is India becoming safer and more convenient for foreigners?
That I'm not so sure. At least the numbers don't say that.
Yeah.
The number of foreigners arriving in India, I don't think it is. It has gone up to the extent it should have.
And why do you think is the reason for that? Because the GDP is rising, the India story, Make in India
Uh,
is globally like the marketing campaign that the government is doing is good. I can't complain about it.
Is that marketing about tourism? That's the question. So is that marketing about India being great as a business entity and India being great as an investment entity and India being great as a tourism entity? These are all different elements.
But I think, let's say, if you position India, let's say what most foreigners or institutions are perceiving India, that India is like China in 2004, exactly $4 trillion GDP, growing at 8%, and this continues to grow 6 to 8% year on year. In 20 years, India will be like a 18 to 20 trillion dollar at least. GDP
Which is true,
country.
but again, that doesn't allure you to tourism. Like China is growing so fast. Like, would I want to visit China, but for what?
But China has created their own set of, right, where the richest man in China is also not secure.
No. Security, China still, I'm not worried as a tourist.
Yeah.
But like, I will travel for what? Like, there's
Okay.
Great Wall of China. Okay.
Yeah.
The second biggest wall is in India, in my state, Rajasthan. So I'll rather go to Kumbhalgarh than go to what, because it's very similar.
Yeah.
So similarly, the story for tourism in India is still untold.
I think we have the most diverse set of
We
tourist
have
locations.
No, there is not doubt about having, but is it
Marketed
and accepted the way it should be is a very different ballgame. Because we've got everything. We've got a desert, so you can give a Dubai experience in India. There's no doubt, and Rajasthan infrastructure is brilliant. Flights are there, trains are there, roads are there.
The number of
anything you
airports
name
that
it,
is getting created is
airport
massive.
is fantastic. So no reason why you can't do that. Similarly, you got Kerala, which is its own. But the bigger ones like MP has got amazing tourism potential. Maharashtra has got amazing tourism potential. You look at the state of forts in Maharashtra.
Yeah.
There, if the similar forts, what Shivaji's forts were there in Europe, everybody would go and pay $100 to visit them.
Yeah.
But yeah, nobody even that Janjira fort or whatever it is. I've been there. What a beautiful fort! Like as you approach it with the boat, you can't see the entry gate itself. That's how created some 400 years ago.
Which fort are you talking about?
There's this Jaljira or Janjira. So Janjira fort.
Yeah.
Something like that. In very, very close to Alibag.
Okay. Mumbai.
Amazing.
I've never heard about it. So see, we are so poor in marketing.
Yeah, that fort is like it's a feat in engineering, because till you reach maybe 100 meters of the fort, you can't understand where to enter this fort from, because everything looks like a wall. And that's how it has been built 400-500 years ago. So if it were in Europe, I'm telling you, like people would be paying hundreds of dollars just to get in. It is so there's so many places like that. So yeah, a long way to go. There are different priorities, different things.
Because also, I think it impacts. My belief is that it impacts your business, because how many other countries are willing to, let's say, make travel for Indians more easier is depending on how many of their own citizens travel to India.
Yeah, that helps, especially in direct flights. That if a lot of people are traveling, then you have more direct flight connections. If in Europe also, if I'm not wrong, maybe UK, France, Germany, and Holland. Only 5 countries have direct flights to India. There's no direct flight from Spain. There's no direct flight from Switzerland. No direct flight to Italy. So yeah, it definitely impacts.
One of the conversations that I wanted to have today is, right now we discussed about the travel sector at quite large. We have covered length and breadth for our viewers to understand, right, how it impacts them personally, right? How when they travel abroad, which are the countries which are more favorable to them, which are the countries still difficult for them, and how can they make their life through Niyo card, for example, more easier.
Yes.
But I wanted to touch upon like the state of fintech in India. Like you mentioned that the continuous monitoring by RBI. How has that impacted your business, both positive and negative?
So one thing about our regulators is that they are very focused on consumer, which is a great thing. So you would have seen that we had various crises. 95, 98, 2002, 2007. Indian consumer has never lost a single rupee, touch wood. in any other banking crisis. And that's all kudos to our regulators. So they're very conservative, consumer focused, consumer first thought process, which is fantastic for all of us. Like, we don't want to have very cowboyish attitude where all of us end up losing our life savings. So they're doing very well there. Very, very particular about data and how the data can be used, misused. So those are all great things about how the regulators are, and which is why we exist. If the regulation was weak, people lose money, then anyway people not invest in any bank, leave alone Neo Bank or anything like that. Now, where it becomes difficult is that the licenses are only so many because the controls are fairly tight.
How many licenses, banking licenses are there in India?
Total scheduled banks would be some 80 or
80. And how many do they increase per year?
Oh, scheduled banks, though hardly anything. The last licenses were IDFC and I think Bandhan Bank.
And is there any transparency on how these licenses get issued?
Yeah, it is. There are certain criteria, etc., but it is extremely difficult. So,
tomorrow, if Neo had to get a banking license, what would you have to be to get a banking license?
For somebody like Neo to get a banking license, that the only way is to get a small bank license. So there are 3 kind of licenses available: small bank, payment bank, and the full universal bank. Universal bank naturally has its own terms and conditions, very difficult. Small bank license, of course, it's on tap. You can apply, and based on what consumers you are serving, does regulator find you to be safe or not, it may be issued to you.
Is government is still issuing a few small licenses?
Yeah, of course. They are regularly issuing small bank licenses. Cooperative banks are getting upgraded to small banks. NBFCs can apply and have a fair chance at getting it. So it is not easy by any stretch of imagination, but it is also not impossible, definitely. So what would have been great? So, for example, in Europe, you've got the digital license, which is very separate from everything else. And in fact, all our neighbors, take Singapore for that matter, Thailand for that matter, they've got a digital bank license available. So that is one thing on which regulators have not had the conviction that why should we have any digital license when our own traditional banks can do digital business. So that's something maybe our problem, that we've not been able to convince them that we can add value to the customer. But that's what they're looking at end of the day. But okay, I'll give you a license. What value are you going to add to me? Are you going to make it more accessible? Are you going to make it more cheaper? Are you going to make it more safer? So these are some of the questions they ask, and maybe as an industry we've not been able to convince them on the digital bank license. And that's what I think. If you look at Indian fintech on lending, doing good. It's I don't see any difference between NBFC. You can get an NBFC license fairly easily, I would say, if you have a good business model and good, you're not going to jail or something like that. So you would get an NBFC license, and it's in good space, no problem there. Similarly, not related to regulators, but if you want to do an insurance business, you want to do a stockbroking business, you want to do a mutual fund business, all fairly easy to do. The banking per se, where you take customers' deposits, is what is a very, very sensitive issue for the regulators. And that's where they've been extremely tight about it, rightfully so maybe. But that pulls the whole neo-banking, which effectively means taking deposits and being equivalent to a bank, that is not taken off in India.
And has it affected your strategy also as a company over the course of years?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we started off, we said, okay, why can't we be like Monzo? Why can't we be like Revolut? Why can't we be like New Bank? But then over a period of time, what we realized that all of these companies, within a few years of their existence, got a proper license to operate.
Yeah.
And hence they were able to scale without any worry about partnering somebody, whims and fancies of others. And that opportunity we've not been given in India. And hence we had to evolve and kind of look for our own ways.
To build your own moats which are beyond banking.
Build our own moats and build our own strategy where you're not dependent on others. So for example, we've gone very cross-border way, acquired some licenses which are very limited in scope, but being India, that limited itself is very large. Yeah. So you know that you can make a very large company doing a very small work. So the canvas, what we wanted, where we will do everything what, let's say, an HDFC is doing, but digitally, that is shrunk to say that we will do cross-border better than anybody else for consumers in India.
And want to understand, like today, since you've mentioned that you are zero forex, right? So how does Neo make money?
Yeah, so there is an interchange which comes to the issuing bank. So that interchange is there, and then of course there are value-added products which the customers buys from us. So it can be the travel services I'm talking about, or other value-added products in general.
But that is sufficient to offset the CAC of a
Yeah,
customer?
of course. Because we, as I mentioned, 50% of our business is organic. So our
Yeah.
CAC is hardly even $10, less than $10.
And what are your lessons on acquiring customers? Because that's the hardest part, right? In this.
So our thesis has been that if we build a fantastic product and there's a large enough market for that product, it will sell.
Okay. Without even promoting it.
Yeah. I mean, you have to do bare minimum promotion, but nothing earth shattering. Although we have done IPL too. So we can't say that we have not promoted, but our maximum sale has happened without promotion. So my sale during IPL versus my sale non-IPL, we have realized that non-IPL is better. IPL gives you a lift for sure and gets you brand recall right up there. But, consumers take it on word of mouth. And hence NPS becomes very important. So we've been unlucky in some partner bank issues, which is, users had a little challenge and they kind of thought twice. But otherwise, from our side, there has been like no let up in effort to ensure that this is the best product a user can kind of carry abroad and continuing that.
So, for example, let's imagine a hypothetical scenario today that it's a white canvas and money is not an issue for you, and previous what you have been doing is not an issue. What are the opportunities in fintech that you would pursue today?
See, cross-border is one. What we are doing, I'm very, very bullish about it. Like if you were to tell me everything is gone and start zero, first money you get, what will you do? I'll do cross-border.
Cross-border, and that to consumer, not business.
Maybe business also, because that is also broken. So any kind of cross-border in India, you will make money. Whether you send money out, whether you get money in, whether you do it for consumer, whether you do it for corporate, you want to make money. Because you're going to improve. More than make money, you're going to improve the process which exists. So that is one business. Other than that, if you ask me what Indian fintech can do now, and if I were to start, other than cross-border, someone tell me, okay, you're locked out of cross-border.
Yeah.
What else would you do? Yeah. Then maybe I would do home loans.
Okay. Why is that?
Because home loan 20 years ago versus home loan today, it has evolved, or rather the process of home loan 20 years ago versus now has changed dramatically. Because 20 years ago, if I were to find out who the owner of this flat is, I would have to get 100 documents, trust in those documents. Now a lot of it is getting digitized. So in most of the cities or most of the states now, you can just go in and you will know the whole history. And hence it enables you to lend better, lend faster, lend digitally, and it's a safe thing, because in a country like India, everything will go up and down, but over a period of time, your property at least won't depreciate.
Yeah,
we've not seen that yet. So it's a safe business. It's getting to that stage where I think personal loan was 10-15 years ago, and it is going to go digital. My belief is a large chunk of home
loan will become digital.
It will become digital.
You don't have to visit anybody or put a request that please approve my loan.
I don't think so. I think it's going to change dramatically. And the reason I say that is ING, when I joined ING, what really intrigued me back in 2013 was that ING was, I think, the second or the third largest provider of consumer mortgage loan in Australia, and they had 0 branches. Everything was done digitally and through the phone channel.
And we know that, right? India is ahead of other countries in terms of UPI railroad that we have built. You touched this part upon, like some parts of banking are also ahead. What are the other areas that are, we can say that, hey, we are the leaders in digital banking? And what are the things that still need to be improved in digital banking or other parts of consumer and business focused fintech?
Digital banking, I would say leaders. UPI is, of course, I would say the only thing where we are clearly
leaders globally.
Globally,
not even US competes with us.
No, nobody competes with the whole
The peer-to-peer transfer.
peer-to-peer transfer. In other things, we are like there would be somebody who will be equal. We are not too far behind. In some things we'll be better. Some things will be.
What is the second and third best thing after UPI in digital banking or infra in India when compared to money transfer?
I think the whole card management system, which is your credit card and debit cards, and how regulators have mandated that it has to be logged, transactions, second factor security. It is world class.
Okay.
Not many.
Do you think the number of credit card scams in India is lesser than the other countries?
Number of scamsters, that will depend on number of scamsters and number of naive people.
Okay.
So you won't believe the number of people who give their passport details also to scamsters to open a new account. It's like unbelievable how naive the people in India are. But in terms of the process security, we are definitely better than most countries I've been to.
Okay. And
their frauds are less because my fraudsters are less.
Yeah.
Maybe here there's so many jamtaras floating around. So.
Yeah. And what are the things that you think need improvement today?
So home loan is one area I think
mentioned
clearly
digital. It will be completely digital. You mentioned.
Yeah, digital, and there are so many instruments. Like in India, the reverse mortgage.
Yeah.
Is I don't know. You haven't started, or I really don't have any data around it. Ki how much it is. But reverse mortgage is really a big deal in a lot of developed countries, where you say that my house is 5 crores. I mean, you're going to conk off in 20 years. So you bet on it that the bank pays you money till you die. So that product in India, because maybe it's a cultural thing that you want to leave it for your kid or something like that. It is different in developed countries, but that's something which will, which is these kind of instruments are going to come to India soon.
No, thank you so much, Vinay. Loved having you on the podcast and enjoyed this conversation so much.
Thank you so much, and it was very, very joyful for me also.
Thanks again.
Thanks.